Hi, everybody. So I was asked to cover technology for emotional wellness. And in order to do that, I need to anchor it for a minute. And so I'll take you through a few things. And then also, I want to assure you that a big part of my work is looking at the ethics, privacy, and data ownership of these technologies. I'm going to show you some very powerful things. And I don't want you to be scared because we're looking and thinking about those things. But with no further ado, so I work, let's see, this way. Where do I point this? I am pushing the right button. All right. So I work on the future of human possibility. Let's see. Yeah, this is not working. So I work on the future of human possibility. And so what that means is that we begin with the premise that the future of work, society, and technology is based on the state of the human mind. And so with that, we ask the question, how do we enable every human being to develop mentally and emotionally to their full potential? Okay. And so what transformative technology is it's tech to support mental health, emotional well-being, and human thriving. And so this is the well-being spectrum and the way that we look at it. So future basics, this is my desire is that for this to be the basic that everyone has. One of the things about these three things, mental health, emotional well-being, and happiness, is that these are trainable skills. I've spent quite a bit of time meditating and in monasteries, and as an adult, the ability to relate to our emotions is definitely a trainable skill. In the middle is the future of work, and so if any of you have heard about the future of work and the rise of the automation line, these are the skills that we will need in order to be compensated in the future, where work is really about humans solving problems together and creating and innovating together. And then this last category is future human, and this is full human flourishing and the full expression of our potential and enhancement of our mental and our emotional and cognitive abilities. And so when we think about emotional wellness, which was my assignment for this talk, some of the words that you see are the ability to be resilient, to adapt to change, and optimism, awareness of our emotions. Well, I guess I should stay in one place. Awareness of our emotions, and the ability to control our emotions and to adapt to life's challenges. So this is one definition of emotional wellness. And then you have the PERMA model, which lists a couple of these things. And then you also have the flourishing model. And this is empirically validated as sort of the things that allow human beings to truly flourish. I think it really comes down to learning how to be, learning how to feel, and learning how to become across the vast array of human emotion. And the things that we are presented with in our lives. And so this guy thinks it's important too, as we are beginning to live longer. But this is probably one of the real drivers of why everyone in this room should be concerned about this. The jobs of the future are really going to be based on human interaction, problem solving, and creativity. So one of the things, if you're tracking any of this, what you'll know is that the difference between a pessimist and an optimist is really how fast that they think this is going to happen. How fast that they think the number of tasks are going to be removed from typical jobs. And so while this is scary, it's also tremendously exciting because for the first time, we actually really have the motivation and the reason to teach emotional well-being at scale, to get people to the self-awareness and emotional self-regulation so that they can be mentally and emotionally happy so that we can all work together. The challenge is that today we teach most of this by luck. Did you have the right parents? Were you in the right school? Did you have the right mentor? When we really need to be able to teach it at scale. This is a quote by a woman who leads innovation for a Fortune 500 company. And one of the things that's so wonderful about it is that in the ambition to think of things that no one has thought of yet, and if you think about all the problems that are facing mankind and our biggest challenges, we need a great deal of innovation. And so to do that, what this woman has discovered is that she has to help her people find their very best parts of themselves. And then that comes back again to the ability to be, to feel, and to become. And so there's a wide variety of things that are facing us. You know, if you guys are tracking any of the big conversations, you hear about the cognition crisis and the attention economy. And if you're tracking the state of stress and anxiety around the world, it is off the charts. And it's not a Western thing. Stress in China is extraordinary. All around the world, this is happening. But we also stand in a very exciting situation because the technology is finally here. We just have to point it in the right directions. And so these are a full list of trends that are happening. This is from a good friend of mine named Tim Chang. And so when you look at all of these trends, you may not look at these trends and think, oh, that has everything to do with emotion and emotional wellness. But it does, because it sets the backdrop of the types of technologies that we can develop to support mental and emotional well-being of humans. And so if you ask the question, what if technology could support us mentally and emotionally, I would say that the answer is yes. These are some of the ways that technologies can support us, and I'm going to show you for the rest of the presentation sort of where the landscape is and what people are developing. But it also really begins with a framework of thinking about these in terms of technology to assess, to amplify, to enhance, and to connect. And all of this is driven by the exponential technologies. So to get started, you know, there's actually a lot of researchers and scientists in the room, so some of this will be completely familiar, but these are some of the methods of assessment on human emotional state, data that we can pick up. We can do it this way, we can do it this way, and then and there's many more than this. And these data streams can be leveraged by these types of technologies to develop interventions and support tools for humans for mental and emotional well-being. So this is going to be a fast overview of what people are doing. Things that you can see as it relates to sleep and meditation, stress management. A big part is emotion recognition, software to pick up the data that I showed you before and to use it to establish a model of how that human is thinking and feeling. Other things that are happening, mood management, emotion tracking, behavior change, VR, AR, pattern recognition. One of the things that many people don't know is at the beginning of 2017, the command, Alexa, help me relax, became one of the commands in the top third of what people were asking. And the reason why I think this is really interesting as a trend is that, you know, sometimes when people think about technology and human emotion, they think, oh, isn't it kind of ironic that we might need to use technology to sort of like understand how we're feeling? I think there's a great deal of range and possibility in using technology to actually teach us how to relate to the way that we feel, which is a big part of meditation training. So we're not talking about something that isn't possible. I think many people have this belief that emotions are sort of very ephemeral and that there isn't anything to do with training and teachability around it. If compassion is teachable, then emotional self-regulation is teachable and how we relate to these things. And what technology presents is that we're at a place where the excuse that we do not have the resources in order to provide these types of skills and trainings to the entire human race is no longer true. We're just in a place where we have to productize, prove efficacy, and then deploy. Here's some more examples. One of my favorite products is Trip. And one of the things I love about what Nanea has done is that, her product is very useful for people who are just on the beginnings of understanding, their stress responses and needing something. So I see Trip as a product on the front line of converting people into understanding who they are. And one of the things I love about it is not only do they have on their roadmap things to help people manage or people be inspired for their happiness, but also reflection. Because it's not about us being happy all the time. It's about how we relate to our emotions. Some of the things I'm very excited by, I love haptics, I love neurostimulation, and I'm also really interested in the gut biome and mood. I think, it's still too early to say exactly what's going to happen there, but I think if what some of the people who are working on this think is possible, this will be very exciting for human psychological well-being. Some of the other things, as I mentioned, that I'm really excited about, I love neurostimulation. I met someone at the cocktail party, and I was like, what do you do? And he said, non-invasive neurostimulation. I said, oh, I love that. So I think that's interesting. And then the presentation just a minute ago on smell and on the olfactory system, we don't do nearly enough with this system in terms of what I've seen productized. I think there's a tremendous amount of possibility there. I'm also obsessed with the vagus nerve, like obsessed. So there was a few people there earlier today that I was talking to. Some of the other things that are really interesting is I think we can do quite a lot with light. I also think CareBots, robots, the empathetic digital friends. Again, this is a situation where many people say, oh, well, shouldn't you just have real friends? And you should. I think one of the things that people have to remember that none of this is binary. It's not that you will only get mental and emotional training through technology. It is to complement what's happening in the real world. And so there have been several cases with some of the suicide prevention apps with teenagers, as well as some of the things that the people in the U.S. with the Veterans Affairs have noted is that sometimes people feel more comfortable confessing or sharing that they're having a problem to a digital avatar. And then some of the best people or best companies are starting to use natural language processing to know which words are triggering that someone is going to have an issue or showing that someone's going to have an issue, and then passing that person very quickly to a human who can step in and help them. So it's very important not to think about these things in a binary standpoint. So this is the worst possible slide. This is a horrible slide. But the point of it is to show you the range of use cases. Every single thing on this slide from a technological standpoint is possible. Like the technology is here, but what happens or what needs to happen is it must be productized by by scientists, entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs working with scientists. And so it needs to be productized, and then it needs to be studied for efficacy, and then it needs to be deployed at scale. But there isn't anything on this page that isn't possible from a technology standpoint. And so, one of the other things, the point that I want to make is that we design this stuff. We design it, right? And so we can design it to ensure and to require that humans be at the center. Because the point of it is not to replace human interaction and connection, but the point is to help establish a level of mental and emotional health, skills, and unlocking the bonus levels for human beings so that when we are in the human interactions one-to-one, the noise is gone, the technology's in the background, and we're actually two human beings together. This is what it's for. This is how we have to build it. And so, one of the questions is, okay, what is next? Like, what comes after all of this? And many people do not know that Maslow actually had another level. How many people know that the self-transcendence was at the top? Yeah, so, mostly what you see is you see it ending at self-actualization. But if you check online, you'll actually see that he wrote about self-transcendence. He just didn't publish it in detail before he passed away. And so what the self-transcendence stands for is that when you realize that that self that you actualized, you don't actually need it anymore. And so that's interesting, because to the question of what's next and what technology can be the foundation for, is it really is moving into the layer of human life, being about self-authorship and artistry, where we're all, we're all developing our potential and using it for the benefit of the human race. And so I truly believe that we are standing at the threshold of a new era in human flourishing, and that we actually can embrace human psychological well-being, and that for the first time in history, we actually have the motivation to do so because need, demand, and means have come together. We actually need to develop our human psychological well-being to support the global economy. And that's exciting because you have to have all three of those things, need, demand, and means, to make a market. And that's finally happening. But what it does mean is that we have to build the tech that we need. And we have to come together and do that. And so I represent the Transformative Technology Lab. We're the largest ecosystem of people, innovators and entrepreneurs, scientists and investors who are building this kind of technology. And our mission is to support innovators and entrepreneurs in building this kind of technology. Now we're in 70 countries. We just got another country, and 450 cities. These are the people that we're in contact with who are building or want to build this technology. And so what it really boils down to is that we have the ability to establish a new era of human mental and emotional well-being. And so part of this presentation, besides for giving you a very fast overview, is to ask you to join us. The TTL, Joy Ventures, Joyance, and all of the other people who are working in this space. So I thank you very much. I have 2 minutes, so.
We've got 2 minutes for questions. Just to say, we also, because we're running a bit behind schedule, we are going to plow on with the first part of what was going to be after the first break, and then we will have the break after that. So for those of you running out now, hoping for a break, please don't. So, any questions for Nichol?
Any questions?
We have one over there. All right. Could go either way. I'll go a little bit closer this time. Ready? What's the lady next to you? Heads up. Hey, first catch.
Okay, thank you very much. I really like. This is the microphone?
Yes, that's the point of it.
Okay.
It's not a game.
So I have a question. The glandula pineal, like pineal gland, you know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Pineal gland. Pineal gland.
Oh, the pineal gland, yeah.
Yes. So how can we relate this awesome fact inside of our brain to all these well-being technologies?
How can we relate this to other...
To the well-being technologies, the wellness.
The well-being technologies. How can we relate this...
You know, I'm...
to well-being technologies?
So I'm not an expert in the pineal gland. Actually, my background, which I didn't mention, is I worked in video games for 14 years, which included at the end running and operating World of Warcraft China. So, and then I went on a meditation retreat and I had an awakening. And so I work with people who are experts in that, and I support people who are experts in that. And my goal is to support anyone who is building this type of technology, also with high ethical standards. So certainly, are you an expert in that? Is that what you want to build? Is that why you're asking that question? So the way, I think your question really is, what does this mean for spirituality? I think that might actually be your actual question. Well, I mean, I think spirituality with a broad definition of knowing yourself and understanding that the world is wider than just one person. And so that's how you would map this to to spirituality. I think people's personal belief systems are theirs. This would be a foundation that would help get the noise out of the way. So whatever it is that they believe, they can, dig deeply into that. And then also to increase and enhance our ability to connect with one another, which I think all of that is one of the goals of spirituality. So that's how it overlaps.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nichol Bradford.